Hey everyone, welcome back to Anyone Can Cook with Lauren. I am Lauren, and today we are going to be making French onion soup. This is one of my favorite soups to make, and it is super easy. So we're gonna go ahead and start with our onions here. I have 6 sweet onions, or also Vidalia onions. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna peel it a little bit first. I have the bag off to the side, the produce bag. And we're just gonna peel these. If they're a little tricky to peel, you can always cut off the top and cut off the bottom, and then cut it in half, because then it's a lot easier to peel off the outer layer of the onion, which you always want to peel off because it can be kind of dingy, kind of gross from the store. And then what we're going to do, once we have both halves peeled here, is we're going to flip them onto the flat side, and we're going to slice the long way. And we're going to just make a couple of slices here, like this, and then we're going to cut it in half. For French onion soup, you don't necessarily need to dice the onion up. You just need to make it small enough to cook. In my pot here, I have a 1.5 tablespoons to 2 tablespoons of butter and about 1 tablespoon of olive oil. And that's what we're going to use to cook our onions on the stove here and make our soup in this pot. So we're going to go ahead and toss our onion in there. A little bit of the hard bit left on here, so just going to cut that off. And just make sure you try and separate the onions as best as you can. You can always separate them more with the spoon while you're stirring it up. And these may sting a little bit. I can already kind of feel it. If the onions are really strong, you can take a break and just come back to it in a minute. But I try and cut them as fast as possible to get rid of that sting. Once you start cooking them, it won't be a problem. It's just when they're raw, when they kind of hurt your eyes. All right, gonna do the same thing with this, cutting it the long way, about 3 cuts, and then in half, and just separating into the pot. So this is one of my favorite soups to make. It is really easy, and honestly, I love the taste of French onion soup. And with this, traditionally you use a beef broth, which is what I'm gonna use. But you can use vegetable broth if you'd like to, and keep it like a vegetarian dish. So I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna cut up the rest of these onions, get those cut and peeled, and then we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next step. All right, now that we have our onions all chopped up and in our pot here with our butter and our olive oil, we're gonna go ahead and add a couple cloves of minced garlic. And this is gonna kind of enhance the flavor of the soup a little bit. And this is definitely one of those like comfort, cozy soups to make on a really cold night or in the winter, or if you feel like you're getting a cold. This just really helps make you feel a lot better. So I'm trying to get all of it out here. We'll go ahead and put that in. And what we're going to do is we're going to heat this on the stove on about medium heat. And as that butter and oil start to heat up and melt, we're going to stir the onions around, get them all coated. And then we're going to cook them down for about half an hour or so, maybe 45 minutes, until they are really reduced and kind of see-through, translucent, starting to cook a little bit, maybe brown a little bit. And then we're gonna go ahead and add the liquid to the pot. So we're gonna go ahead and get that taken care of. But before we put them on the stove, we're going to lightly salt them. I don't know the scientific reason, but this I feel helps the onions cook a little bit better. So I always do this, because the times that I haven't put the salt on beforehand, I feel like they take longer to cook down and they don't cook down as well. So we're gonna go ahead and put these on the stove, and once they start to cook a little bit, we're gonna come back to them and give them a good stir. Okay, so we have our onions and garlic on the stove, and as the butter and the oil are heating up and the butter is starting to melt, I'm gonna go ahead and start stirring the onions around and get them all coated with the oil. I'm trying to keep the butter at the bottom there so it can melt. So once that melts, we're gonna go ahead and stir everything around. And my eyes are still recovering from the onions. All right, so once everything is coated here, you want to just leave them for a few minutes at a time. Let them start to cook and get translucent, which means see-through. Let them brown up a little bit. And after about 30 minutes or so, they will be ready to add the liquid. But you want to make sure you're stirring them intermittently because you don't want them to burn. So just make sure everything's nice and coated here. And I have mine called a French oven or Dutch oven, kind of similar. And it is just a cast iron pot with a ceramic coating on the outside. It's oven safe, stove safe. I love cooking soups in here, chili in here. I even make roasts in here sometimes and other things. It's a really, really like universal kitchen pot. You can use it for almost anything. It really is awesome. My husband got it for me as a Christmas gift one year. The lid even has a nice pretty snowflake on it. All right, so now that everything is nice and evenly coated, we are gonna let them sit here, and you can leave them uncovered. We're gonna leave them here for a little bit and come back and just keep stirring them like every 5 minutes or so they don't burn until they are ready for the liquid. So we are gonna leave these guys here and we're gonna let them cook and come back to them in a little bit. All right, so we're about halfway through our cooking time here. And you can see that the onions have started to break down. They're starting to kind of brown and get a little bit translucent. So we're gonna keep cooking them until they are fully browned and translucent and all done. It's really gonna reduce like the size of the onion pile by about half, which is amazing. These really shrink down when you cook them, which is why we use so many onions. So we're gonna go ahead and let these guys finish up. All right, so our onions are starting to reduce really nicely and they're starting to brown up. So we're just gonna keep stirring them until they're done. They're almost there. And then we're going to add a 1/4 cup of our liquid and do what's called deglazing. So we're going to deglaze the pot, which means get any of the stuff off the bottom out and into the liquid. That's kind of where some of the flavor is as well. So anything that's been stuck to the bottom a little bit there, all of that will come up and be in the soup. You can see it's really shrunken down. So gonna give these a few more minutes because there are still some bigger pieces that aren't quite cooked down as much as I would like. So we're gonna go ahead and give it the full half hour and then we'll add our liquid. All right, so now that our onions have cooked down, we're gonna go ahead, give them one more stir. And then we're going to add a 1/4 cup of our liquid, just to very lightly get any of those bits off of the bottom. You can also use white wine for this part if you want, but you don't have to. It doesn't change the flavor a whole lot in my mind. This way it's pretty universal for anyone. So I'm gonna go ahead and deglaze. Once that thickens up a little bit, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add 2 tablespoons of flour. This is gonna kind of help thicken the soup a little bit. So just sprinkle that on without spilling all of your onions. We're gonna mix in that flour here. And we're just gonna mix it until it cooks down and starts to brown a little bit. You don't wanna undercook flour because that can give you a stomach ache. You wanna make sure you cook it all the way through. So about 2 minutes here. So once our flour is cooked through here, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add our liquid and our seasonings. All right, so I've added most of our liquid to the pot here. I am using a beef broth, but you can use vegetable if you wanna keep it, vegetarian or vegan. And I'm gonna add the last cup here. You want 7 cups, not counting that 1/4 cup because that kind of just thickens up and basically evaporates. But you want 7 cups of beef broth, which is about what this holds. And give it a good stir. Get everything incorporated in there. Okay. And then we're gonna go ahead and add our spices. So I am going to do a light sprinkling of salt. You can add more after, but just for now adding that because we did add some already. We're also gonna add some ground pepper And I like to do just an even coating over the top, and you can always add more later on if you want, once it cooks down a little bit and you taste it. We're also going to add some dried thyme and just a coating over the top, and also a little bit of dried rosemary as well. All right, and then the last herb for our soup is going to be a bay leaf. So we're going to go ahead and take out a good one here and just drop that in. And we're going to go ahead and stir everything up. Once it's finished up, we can always taste it, add more of what we want later on. But we're going to go ahead and cover this up. We're going to let it cook for 15 minutes to a half an hour, depending on how much time you have. And then we're going to go ahead and taste it and see how we did. All right, so now that our soup is done, we're going to go ahead and take a look. It looks great. Just going to give it a stir here real quick. Okay. And then let's do a taste test and see what we need. You want to be careful because it's going to be really hot. I think it's perfect. We're going to go ahead and get it in a bowl, and then we're going to put our special topping on it. All right, so now that we have our soup in our bowl here, I have some French bread, and we're going to go ahead and grate some Gruyere cheese on top. Now you can use shredded mozzarella if you want, or Swiss cheese, but I like using Gruyere. So we're going to go ahead and place the bread on top here, and we're going to go ahead and just grate the cheese over the top. I like doing it this way so that the extra cheese falls in the bowl. All right, now we're going to microwave this for about a minute till the cheese melts, and then we're going to go ahead and see how we did. All right, so we have our finished soup here. It looks amazing. You can see the really nice color in that soup, all the herbs, the melted cheese on the bread. That's my favorite part. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to see how we did here. We're going to get some of the bread here on the spoon, just break some of that up. Okay. We're going to get some of the onions in there. All right, let's see how we did. It's perfect. It is warm, it is comforting, all the herbs just come together in there. As always, the recipe and the instructions will be down in the description below. And, let me know your favorite soup in the comments. Maybe I'll make it on the channel at some point. As always, this has been Anyone Can Cook, and remember, anyone can cook.